Hello again, welcome back. This week's topic is going to be another sort of dark one, but it's the way it goes. Once again, thank you to everyone who's stuck around this long and continue to listen to my story. Thank you for continuing to care. Let's get into it. And by the way, this is Sasha. He's gonna be my little buddy today and just give me some moral support if I should need it, or just, be cute. He's the eye candy. All right, so today I want to talk about the time that I spent in a mental institution. It was not a fun time, although there were some moments of camaraderie between all the patients. It wasn't good. It didn't help. It really exacerbated a lot of my problems. But okay, so I went to the psychiatrist's office with my mom. I was either 16 or 17 this time. I want to say 16, but it might have been 17. So I was a minor. My psychiatrist informed me that due to some of the things I confessed to him, he was concerned for the safety of others and of my own safety too. So I was promptly escorted across the street to an institution, and from there my mom handed me over and I got brought into like a back room, an examination room really, and I stripped down, which was like so jarring. Like I was still like kind of in shock from like only a few moments ago being in the safety, or what I thought was the safety, of my psychiatrist's office. Now I'm suddenly like with a stranger, taken away from my parent and instructed to undress. And the reason for that is because they have to check you for signs of harm, signs of like maybe physical abuse from home, signs of self-harm. And they also needed to do a pretty thorough inspection to ensure that you weren't smuggling anything in, like contraband or anything that could be used as a weapon. So that was invasive. And then I didn't eat, I was so numb though. I don't remember feeling, I was like, I didn't love it, but I was like, okay, I can handle this. I've never been like too shy about nudity. So then what really like caught me off guard, it was upsetting to be told that they needed to confiscate my bra. And I was so confused, like, what the heck? What do you need with my bra? And they informed me that I had two choices, okay? Excuse me. One, I could either I could hand over my bra and they'd take it away from me. Or, second choice was that they could go in with scissors and cut out the underwire and remove the support from my bra. And so at that point, I'm one of 5 kids, not very financially well off. So, I had one bra to my name at this point in my life. Couldn't afford anything else. And it was like sacred to me, that was like a very important piece of my wardrobe. So I don't even remember if I cried, but I was very upset, and I was like, I don't want you guys to destroy my one and only bra because I'm not going to be in here forever. So I wasn't certain if my parents were even going to buy me a replacement one at that point. So I just very begrudgingly was like, fine, take my bra. And they promised that upon my release, they would return it and I'd get my bra back and it would be in its original condition. And I don't know, maybe that doesn't sound like a big deal, but to my little teenage mind, that was horrifying. I was like, what do you mean you're gonna destroy my bra? But also the imagination to utilize an underwire as a weapon, as a weapon for violence or for self-harm. I was like, oh, you know what though? It's kind of a good idea. Okay, so at this point, I was allowed to put my clothes back on, all except for my bra. Very uncomfortable, you know, for all the reasons that like you want to wear a bra as a young woman. I felt very exposed. So I remember like just like hiding my body as best I could. And then I know that there was more to the like induction process, but it was pretty like clinical. They asked me what meds I was on at that point and what dosage and what, you know, family history, and just if you've ever done like an intake with a psychologist or psychiatrist, like the pretty typical questions. I think they wanted me to repeat what I had shared with my psychiatrist that got me like landed in there. It went by pretty quick though, so they escorted me through like 2 sets of locked doors. Like it was like a jail, like security, high security measures. Luckily, I was underage when I got put away. So the reason that's lucky is because I got a peek at the adult ward while I was being escorted to the children's ward. And there's no better way to say this, but it was grim. I mean, a mental hospital is not like gumdrops and rainbows, but peeking into the adult ward, I was just like sheer terror. The poor people in that part, there's just not, you know, like that, I talk about like that inner spirit, like that fire, that like the angst, you know, of like being a teen or a child. What I witnessed very briefly was like that was gone. It was a lot of people in a more like vegetative state, or just generally it was more dire. And in that moment I remember promising myself like, okay, whatever happens to me the rest of my life, like I will never end up back here. At least not after I turn 18, because that was chilling. It looked like a bad scene over there. And I was like, okay, hopefully the children's unit isn't as spooky. So they let me through. And you know, there wasn't a lot of kids in the children's unit. I mean, like a rough estimate, like less than 50, maybe between 25 to 30, like teens are in there. And it's not children, like little kids, it's adolescents, it's teenagers. And so you're thrust into this environment, this like really fishbowl environment, and you're the new girl. So there's not like a lot of people in there too to be like distracting each other. Like you're fresh meat. So I remember just like immediately like sitting in one of the main rooms where we'd congregate, and just like, you know, I'm like a very like self-conscious teenager at this point, but I've got like my hair, I was like a little scene kid, so I had like my peacock like bleached white hair with like a chunk of like black in it, and it's like standing up like every direction. And you know, at that point in time I did a lot of things to present a certain way. It's a cry for attention, and I got a lot of attention. So I'm seated, still freaked out, I don't have my bra on, and I'm very self-conscious of like this area. I remember still like huddling, trying to like cover my little bumps that were only like just emerging. You know, self-conscious. I didn't want anything to be too like risque. And meanwhile, like I am like slumping in my chair, just covering myself, and all these faces, all these like random kids' faces are just like looming, like peering into mine, and especially like the boys, right, but girls too. And they all just had like a million questions for me, because these are kids that some of them had been in there for months, and it was exciting. If somebody new came in, you wanted to know their story, you wanted to like sniff them out. I get it, but talk about overwhelming. I've never experienced anything like that. You know, typically when I have started at a new school, people don't really like care that much. You know, they're kind of like curious, like, oh, you're new, but usually like they'll just like, for better or for worse, leave you alone, and you're actually like wishing you get more attention or immediate friends. But luckily, that initial encounter, I just read the other kids' enthusiasm as like general interest. Nobody was trying to bully me at that point. Nobody was trying to be too gross, even though I could tell some of the boys were like I guess just like keen for a new like female presence. So that was uncomfortable because I was like, I've always been very self-conscious about, at least about like social interacting. Sorry, social interacting. You know, maybe it's like a being on the spectrum thing. So eventually, though, from what I remember, a nurse or someone on the staff guided me to where my room would be. And they did not, okay, so they did not separate like boys from girls, but however, like one side of the hallway, all those rooms were girls, the other side was all boys. And so I did have, my first roommate was just this very quiet girl. I don't even remember her name. She spent most of her time in bed under her blankies. And I was like, okay, fine, this is where I'm gonna sleep. And what stood out to me about the lodgings there is that there's no sharp corners anywhere. Like this would be a no-no. The desks are built into the wall and they're made of like blue plastic and they have like a curve. Everything was like soft plastic curved. I remember thinking it looked like an IKEA, like children's display room. And I learned that was so that you couldn't use those to harm. You couldn't utilize the furniture or the decor to harm yourself or others. So that felt very like Alice in Wonderland because I'd never seen a room. So it wasn't literally like the walls weren't padded, but it was pretty close to it. And each room had like its own shower, but there's a toilet and shower, but there's no like, I don't think there's any doors and there certainly weren't any locks. So let's see. There's a lot I can remember, and then there's also a lot that I can't because this was over, gosh, this was almost like 20 years ago now. Whoa. But sometimes it still feels like it was yesterday. I think a part of me stayed there. Let's see. So first roommate, didn't really get to know her much. But then she got, well, hold on, let me back up. So I think my first or second night there, I somehow managed to get some sleep. But then I was very rudely awoken when my heart's like racing, like explaining this and like reliving it. But I woke up middle of the night, it's pitch black in my room just about, and one of the boys, this like a very tall guy, who had been institutionalized because he was like a gang member, and like he'd show anyone who asked, like he'd been shot at a few times and like lived, but he had pretty severe schizophrenia. His name was Albert, and he was probably one of the more like higher needs, higher support kids that was in there. I think he'd been in there for a long time. So I wake up and all I see are just like this tall guy standing over me in the pitch black with like wide eyes. And if that's not terrifying enough, he's like in like a catatonic state, almost like a trance. And he just has like, I remember like drool like forming on his bottom lip. And he's still just like staring at me, not moving, like breathing heavy. And in that moment, like my biggest fear was like, oh my God, please don't drool on me. And it did, like slowly, this like glob of slobber like dripped down onto me. And I was, oh no, that's too much. But even though there was like night staff, which I don't know like how he even got in my room, but they were negligent. So I just was so petrified because like I said, I was a very like meek little girl. Nobody in my life had taught me to stand up for myself or to have boundaries. At that point, all I knew was just to be like a piece of meat. So I couldn't find my voice, like quite literally. But I remember just kind of like frantically like whispering at him, like, Albert, what are you doing in here? You're not supposed to be in here, you know, trying to like be a goody and remind him of the rules. And he just went on to be very creepy and was like, I just want to see what you look like. I just want to see what you look like under there. Like trying to lift up my blanket. I'm like trying to hold it down, you know, I'm just in my jammies, feeling very, very vulnerable. And he's trying to be like not as like forward as he like probably wanted to be, but still like I got the hint. And then I did something very cowardly, which I still to this day am ashamed of, but I tried reasoning with him, like, leave me alone, don't touch me. And I was like, go mess with my roommate. I don't remember her name, which is not, that's horrible, right? Like, I can't believe I would try to like pawn this like very dangerous person off onto this other like poor innocent like unwitting girl, 'cause she's asleep too. But I don't know, I guess I was just like a little weasel back then. I have a lot more integrity now and I'm a lot braver, but that in the moment, that was my instinct, was to just be like, get him away from me and go take it out on someone else. And that sucks. But I was very soon, like, I soon learned a lot about my roommate, and I was so proud of her because he goes over there, he's like, all right. And he's like trying to like poke her and wake her up, and she just like shoots straight. And I haven't heard her say a thing this whole like first day of being there, but suddenly she like, shoots straight up in her bed. And she said something, she just like snapped at Albert and was like, get the fuck away from me. And she said it like with so much force and intensity that he like backed off. So I was like, oh snap, like let that be a lesson to me. It's that easy. I was really like impressed. So then he came back over to me because I was obviously the weakest link. And at that point, I think that like my roommate shouting at him had like stirred the staff into motion, like into action. Thank God. So then like this nurse comes in and she turns on the light and she's like, what are you doing? Okay, so Albert hears the nurse like rushing to her room down the hall, and I'll never forget this too. He's like a really tall guy. In my mind, he was like 6 feet. He like jumps over my bed and is like hiding behind it, like very like it just didn't work. Obviously she saw him, but she like, the nurse like turns on the light. She's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing in here, Albert? You're not supposed to be in here. She's very flustered. She doesn't know what she just walked into, and he's just like pretending to like not be there, just like holding still. And I remember being like pleading with that nurse, like, please notice him. This big guy is in our room in the middle of the night. He's not supposed to be. So she escorted him out. She had him removed. I did not get much more sleep the rest of the night. That could have gone a lot worse, but it also wasn't great, right? That was pretty scarring. And that set the tone for the rest of my stay. Let's see, some more about Albert. He ended up, he was like a really sneaky, gross guy, because what his other like trick he would do was, he like in the daytime, he'd let himself into various people's rooms, like boys and girls, and like hide out in their showers and like sneak attack people from their shower. Like that's some Freddy and Jason like boogeyman stuff, right? But that was his move. And then he tried to like proposition you like into doing stuff. And enough people complained. They would escort, it's sad, but this kid Albert would get taken to the like this other back room so many times, where they would like booty juice him. Sounds silly, but what that means is they would inject him with a sedative. Another time he got, and then you're put on solitary confinement for an entire day. He had that happen to him every other day while I was there. Another reason he got booty juiced is because he like jumped over the pharmacy counter one day and attempted to like steal some prescription drugs or terrorize like the nurses over that worked behind the counter. Drag him away, stick him with a needle and booty juice him, and then Albert would be gone for a day. But honestly, that was a relief because it was like you didn't have to worry about him peeping or creeping on you. I don't know if I can talk about this other part too descriptively, but it was silly because like when we would be in group therapy as kids, Albert would just, because he was in and out of like the solitary confinement so often that he mostly just wore like not even scrubs, like a medical gown where like everything is exposed. And he would sit like during group therapies, he would sit with like his legs up, like his knees tucked in, holding his knees like that, naked, and everything would just be like out and exposed. And like he was a big guy, okay, very distracting. All the girls just be like, all these teenage girls just like, oh my gosh, like Albert's thingy's out. And he loved the attention, but it was obviously very inappropriate, so he would get reprimanded for that too. He was quite a character. I don't miss him. Okay, so then a couple days later, I got another new girl arrived, and she was my new roommate, and her name was Denisha, and she was like 4 feet tall. She was very tiny. I don't know. I believe her diagnosis was also schizophrenia. I don't know what was going on with her physically, but she did seem to have something going on with her body where she didn't have a neck. Her head like grew straight out of her shoulders, so it was like conical, like a triangle pyramid shape. So like that affected her breathing too. So she had this very labored like. She just was very intense. She had a lot of problems. When they were first like taking me back to my room to meet her, my new roommate, I'll never forget, Denisha had like, she was standing on her bed, just like facing a wall, and she had pulled her bedspread, like her blanket over her. So she's just like, she looked like a ghost. That was like kind of scary. And I walk into my room and I'm like, cool, okay, I'm not gonna get much sleep. Denisha, she was a vampire also, and nobody really believed her. I did, because like, if you're just around her for even a moment, it was like obvious that girl was a vampire. And throughout her stay, there was like more and more evidence of her vampirism. You know, she was refusing to like eat the food, so this probably played into it, but her, like throughout her stay, her lips dried and were peeling and cracked and bleeding, and her skin just like turned sallow, and her skin was like gray. And people would like tease her and ask her like, what's wrong with you? What's going on? And she'd be like, I'm gonna do her voice. She'd be like, I told you I'm a vampire and I need blood, and they're not giving me any blood while I'm in here. And I remember thinking, like, get this girl some blood. Like, she does look really bad. Obviously, the food isn't sustaining her. And so I remember asking her too, because we're so bored in there. There's no TV, there's no like entertainment, there's not even windows to the outside world. It was very like closed off. But I remember asking Denisha, as my roommate, I was like, hey, what is, because she could smell blood. So I asked her, I was like, what does my blood smell like? And she came over and she sniffed my wrist. And she was like, I'm not interested in what you got. And I was like, oh, rude. Why don't you want my blood? Which was a relief, you know, having to sleep like next to her every night. And Denisha went on to explain to me, because I have lemon scented blood. She said, it tastes too bitter, tastes like citrus. Doesn't want that. It's like, that's really interesting. And you know what? I usually don't get bit by bugs either, like mosquitoes or anything. And I believe it's because Denisha was right. I think I have lemon, citrusy scented blood, and it must be a deterrent. One of the most like miraculous things that happened with Denisha was we were all, like the whole group of kids, we were like at the arts and crafts table in the middle of the day. So I mentioned that there was no like windows to the outside world. We had one big window, but it faced a brick wall. So if you look out, all you can see is like an alleyway brick wall. But anyway, so like that window was behind the table where we're all doing arts and crafts. And Denisha starts like flipping out, and we're like, okay, what now? You know, it's not uncommon for people to have meltdowns in this environment, but Denisha's like thrashing, and she's like, you know, like, I need it, like convulsing. We're like, what's going on? And she's like, I smell it. I smell the blood, the gallons of it right over our heads. And we're like, that's really intense. Can you elaborate? And she's like seizuring about it, like a withdrawal almost. So one of the kids like pushes their head against the window and like looks up through like the tiniest crack between like the brick wall and the sky, and sure enough, they like just barely caught like a commercial plane way up high passing by. And they just kind of like, they're like, holy crap, like, Denisha, you were right, that plane was just over our heads full of people. How did you know? And she just was like, I told you, it's because I'm a vampire and I can smell the blood. That was something else. Let's see. Also, since everybody that was in there, like 99% of the people or the kids in there for like suicidal tendencies, as well as those that were just very like developmentally challenged. However, I was the one that was in there for homicidal tendencies, and that is not, it's not cool. It's not something I'm proud of. It was a very dark time in my life because that was very real. But it did give me a reputation around the place. And other than that scary guy, Albert, it definitely had people like back off. People were wary of me because they were just like, what the heck? That girl, that little blonde girl with the crazy eyes. Yeah, back off. Ooh. So I just thought that was, it's not something to brag about, but it is like a very just curious piece of information because that was the reality. I could hardly believe it too, that those words, like that descriptor was attached to me, but I certainly didn't mind the like, not respect that it earned me, but the like notoriety of, you know, of like, I'm someone to like, to not steer clear of, but like someone to maybe like respect a little bit too. I don't know. I still can't believe that that was me. I'm so happy to be a gummy bear. Because, you know, I always was, but I just, if you push someone to their breaking point, they're going to snap. There was one guy in there, Mike, that immediately, he was like a really big but like slow guy. And he and I immediately were like, I know you. Like, how the hell do I know you? It was instant recognition. And then after just a few moments of talking, we realized like, oh, at that point we both had attended like the same, there was this like music venue called The Underground. At that time, like hardcore bands, emo bands and stuff would come and perform. And if you were like a little sceeny weenie in the local community, you'd probably gone there. And turns out we'd both been at like the same show one night, and it was a small venue, so we probably recognized each other from there. And I was like, oh, cool, some like kinship. But then Mike promptly got put in solitary confinement for throwing a table at one of the staff. So I was like, oh, you have rage issues. And I just kept my distance from him after that. There's another sweet girl named Janelle, and she was really sweet. She was very openly gay, which for me was just like, it was really amazing to know someone my age back then, like 2008, 2007, where it was still very stigmatized. Like, if you're a kid, you're not going to be like openly gay, but she was. And I remember wishing like she would be in my room, like my roommate, but not the case. She was really sweet. There's another guy named Tyler who got institutionalized while I was there. And they made him take out all of his jewelry, including his septum piercing. So, but like one day he was like, you guys come here. He's like bragging. He's like, look what I found. And he had found like a staple in the groove under one of the doorways in the hospital. And he was like, I'm using it as like a retainer in my septum piercing so that it won't close up. Cause that was like a big concern, right? Get your jewelry out, your shit's gonna close up. So we were like, awesome, like stick it to the man. We thought that was so cool, and he was so proud. Then fast forward a couple nights later, and there was a really scary, unfortunate accident, or incident rather. Somehow Janelle, that sweet girl, had gotten a hold of Tyler's little like contraband staple, and she was found like that evening, like passed out in her room, and she had used it to try to like cut her wrists open. She was pretty wounded from that. So she got promptly, she received medical attention and got transferred to another like sister hospital. I didn't see Janelle again after that. That was really, really sad. It like really struck me how like creative, how desperate like someone can get, you know, if they want it, if they set their mind to that, like they'll find a way to do it. I hope that girl is okay now. Let's see, the staff was atrocious. They would tease and taunt the kids mercilessly. I'd watch them like make them like dance, you know, or there was like this one girl who would like get naked and run the halls and do like ballerina twirls, and the staff would be like egging her on because they thought it was so funny. And mind you, she was one of the poor souls that got like dumped there from her parents. That was so, it was not right. Like I said, like the night staff wasn't doing anything, like when boys and girls were sneaking into each other's rooms. There was another guy on the staff named Rommel, and he was a hunk, and he'd bring his guitar and he'd like play music for us and like sing to us. And all the girls had a crush on him, but then like some of them were saying that he was actually like, oh, we have like a thing. And these were like 15, 16, 17-year-old girls. And they were like, no, they're like, I like Rommel, but like, no, like he likes me and we're gonna like be a thing when we're out of here. He was, I don't know. Back then, it even made me feel uncomfortable. It was like, that's not right. We're patients here, and he's like preying on us. So I kept my distance from Rommel after that, but that, you know, that was some groomer shit that he was on. Let's see. There was another boy that got put in there, and his name was Taylor, and he had really long hair, and he was so soft-spoken, and he just seemed like a really kind-hearted boy, and it was sad. He was in there because, according to him, his life was very similar to that of the story. There's like a book called A Boy Called It, and it's just about a boy who like endures some of the worst like physical abuse and neglect. And Taylor said that's what his home life was like. Excuse me. And when his like mom showed up for visiting hours, I remember we all like had his back, and we just kind of like, we'd like mean mug her and just make her feel very uncomfortable to be there, like having access to her son that she was mistreating, to the point that she would like leave their sessions early because he didn't like her being there. Again, this was like, for a lot of us, this was should have been a safe haven. It should have been the one place we could have escaped from our dangerous family members. So we, like, I was proud of us because we'd all gang up and be like, not around us. And she'd just get the heck out of there. She'd be made to feel so uncomfortable. I think some of the kids rallied and did the same for me when like my gross grandparents would come to pay me a visit too. So that guy Taylor, like I had a crush on him, but then like this other girl, Anna Lee, she was super cute and nice. Anna Lee also had a crush on him, and you know, story of my life, he did not care for me in that regard at all, and instead had like a big crush on Anna Lee. And that has happened so many times, but at that point it was really tragic because I was like, not even in this like environment, in this culture of like, you know, kids in a mental hospital, not even there could I be like desirable or seen. So I was very depressed about that, amongst like other things, amongst like the bigger issues, like why I was in there in the first place. But I remember that was a good bit of like some like teen drama. It very much felt like Degrassi. Like, oh, I was so spurned. Whatever though, him and Anna Lee were like, they were really cute together, so I just like got over it. But yeah, there was like crushes, and I remember like that girl Janelle I mentioned, she was hooking up with another girl that was also like institutionalized, and they had like met each other at a previous like mental hospital too before coming there, but they had to keep it on like the down low so that the staff didn't catch on to that and like keep them separate. So they were roommates and they were like hooking up. It was very like it was like a little community. And it like the peak of us feeling like bonded, all of us kids at that point, was when this is kind of messed up, but it was fun. Like someone new was about to be thrown into the mix. They had just like gotten a new patient, and we were all one day bored and we're like, okay, because like at that point we were wearing our pajamas and stuff, like our real clothes, but they technically did have like gear for like hospital patients, like the dressing gowns and like scrubs and like the footy socks. So we're like, let's play a joke on the newbie and let's all just like dress in that and make it seem like this is really like a insane asylum. And like we were a little like we were little punks because that's not cool. I mean, I just told you how freaked out I was upon my arrival, but we did that and we all thought it was so funny. And then like eventually, you know, pretty quickly we dropped the charade and we're like, okay, no, we're actually all like pretty cool here, but isn't it funny to like lean into the aesthetic of like we were all like rocking back and forth in our chairs and like zoning out and just acting like slow motion. But obviously that's mean, so we didn't do it for very long. But I remember feeling like what, like Breakfast Club or something, just like, you know, we're all like in really like poor like states of mind, very mentally like scarred kids, but we're still kids, and you know, we still had that spark of life in us that I'm talking about that I didn't see in like the adult ward. So there was mischief and there was romance and drama, and you know, there was laughter. And I spent 2 weeks in there. I spent Thanksgiving in there. I didn't get to be with my family. I spent a holiday in there, and so you know, that kind of like it encourages but like forces like a bond. You have to humans are very like social animals, you know, community means a lot. I remember eventually I got released. I think it had to do something with like my parents' insurance, so it wasn't because I like got the clear. I didn't like graduate. And their solution for me was to just like do an upheaval of the meds I was on. So like I had been taking, let's say like Zoloft, and they're like, okay, it's obviously not working. We're going to cut you off of that. And they started me on like Prozac or Wellbutrin or Cymbalta, one of the big ones. And they were like, all right, that should do it. Bye. And then I was released and I continued seeing my psychiatrist for the next like few years. Like I said, he ended up diagnosing me when I was 19 with bipolar disorder and put me on some really like intense drugs. I'd just been on every kind of medication at that point that was like on the market. Let's see, any other highlights from my stay there? They take a mugshot of you and it's like in your file. And I remember I was like, show me my mugshot when I was talking to the staff. And I thought it was really cute. So I asked before being released, I was like, can I have that? Can you print it out for me? And they were like, okay. So they did. And I remember them being like, you are wacko. No one has ever requested this before. Like, you're the first. Bye. And I took that mugshot and I like went home and I put it up on my bedroom wall, and there it stayed until I got kicked out. And I'm so pissed because when I got kicked out, my mom went and like ripped all my stuff down, all my posters, all my like memorabilia off my bedroom walls and threw it away. And I really wanted to like keep that picture forever because it's just such an unbelievable like point in my life, chapter in my story, but it's long gone. Speaking of long gone, that hospital has since been closed down because it was not a safe space. Too many kids or adults were successfully unaliving themselves. So it got shut down not long after I was there. And based on what I saw, it was like not soon enough. That place had no business operating the way it did. I mentioned in a previous video that not long after getting released from my stay at the institution, my mom's dad got busted. Because I told you I was in there over Thanksgiving. My mom's dad got busted Christmas Eve. That was a really wild holiday season, and it has forever had a negative effect on like the holidays for me. That was just too much. It was like too many big life events happening at once, and not the good kind. But I'm working on it, you know. I'm trying to like reparent myself and give myself a new lens, because things in my journey to becoming normal, I'm really like intent on reframing things that should be good, reframing them to feeling good. You know, I don't want to have like I don't want to be so like screwed up or like askew that Christmas is bad. Whereas also like things that are bad feel so normal and so familiar to me. I'm always saying that it's not my comfort zone, it's my discomfort zone. Okay, like my comfort zone is to feel uncomfortable. That is not okay. It's not my fault, but it is my job to fix. And I would advise you to do the same. Maybe even take some time to reflect on what might be specific to you that you should probably be like reprogramming. There's so much to say about like brainwashing and stuff too, and conditioning, but I take it very serious now. As an adult, as a grown woman, that autonomy and that choice is mine, to not let like previous outdated like guides or textbooks like that I've like framed my life around. They no longer need to be like the script that I'm following. And I see that this video has gone on longer than any of the others, so I'm going to say goodbye now. If you have any other questions about my stay as a teenager in an institution, feel free to ask me down in the comments. If you have any questions about anything, it doesn't have to be related to me. What questions do you have? Just ask me. And thanks again. I'm deciding what next week's topic is going to be, but I hope you got something out of this one, even if it's just mindless entertainment. Okay,